Hello! Hello, community. Can you hear me? There's a lot of you here and you seem super excited. We're glad to see you. Let me know if you can hear me talking. Hello. Okay, well, it's a very special day here at CC Entertainment. I know you're all here to hear more about our classes, so let's give it to Mark and turn it over and go ahead.
Hey, afternoon everybody. So, as you can see, this is a little bit different format than we've done before. It isn't just me talking in a conference room. And so this is going to be, pretty much the way we're going to do things going forward. We're going to have a lot more talks like this. We're going to have other people besides, obviously, myself on it. And I also want to start with an apology. The plague seems to be starting to go through the office. We've got 2 people down, and I, of course, going on vacation, I feel like absolute crud. So if I'm a little fuzzy today or not quite all there, you understand why. So that being said, introductions. Person on my right you've seen in the videos, that is Michelle. She is lead concept artist here, and she is also going to be doing more of these. And the bearded one, of course, is Ben, and Ben is involved in every aspect of design of this game. He helps out, obviously, on the lore as well, and frankly, whatever else we need somebody who can work with spreadsheets and numbers to do. So, hi.
Hi.
And so, also, forgive us if this is, especially for the first one, a little bit less smooth, I guess, than, other presentations. We're doing everything live. We're not doing anything scripted. We haven't rehearsed for this. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this goes, but this is, I hope, what you folks want to see from us, rather than something that seems kind of, faked. So, I forgot. How could I forget? Want to introduce Cthulhu. We were trying to figure out who could be who else should be on the broadcast, and we're thinking, I don't know, kids, dogs. No, Cthulhu. And this Cthulhu came from that guy. We were in the office, and one day we get a box. And you guys might have seen the presentation, and the box was with a Cthulhu. And we thought somebody was sending us a Cthulhu, one of our fans and backers. And we couldn't figure out for the longest time who actually sent it to us. And of course it was Ben. Where were you at the time, Ben?
Yeah, I was in the hospital at the time.
So, in the hospital, this guy sends us a Cthulhu. He didn't send us the ornament. The ornament was, well, kind of fits the tree. So, we've got a nice continuity there. So, that's the rambling preamble. And let's talk about why we're here. So, for the last, certainly 2 years, people have been asking us about classes. We've been talking about classes. We talked about archetypes. We talked about the number of starting classes during the Kickstarter. We had stretch goals that added classes, to the game. And so now, as we push ourselves towards beta, it's time to have a pretty serious conversation about where we're going with our class system. So let's start off with the too long didn't listen version. We're going to have more classes. Okay. I think that's done. I think that's done. So that's for you guys who just wanted the quick, 10, 15-second spot. There you go. We're going to have more classes in Camelot Unchained than you guys thought we would. So I think that's a pretty good summation.
Yeah.
Now, why are we going to have more classes? And are they going to be stretch goals? Second question first. No, we're not talking about, hey, we're going to have a ton more classes, and guys, we're going to have all these stretch goals for them. So we thought you would think that's a good thing. First question. Now, second, why are we going to have more classes? Well, if you go back to our Drenga presentation, we talked about the path system. And even during that presentation, we said that one of the potential disadvantages of the path system was that we had to come up with 4 to 5 paths that were very iconic, very strong in gameplay and theme. And we even, quite frankly, warned that that was going to be quite difficult. And over the last number of months, Ben and I have been talking about that. And, it was and is something that we're still going to do, but we're just going to pare it down a little. And, really the reason for that, well, there are a lot of reasons for that we will go into. But really the main reason that we're doing this is, frankly, to add better gameplay. What do you think, Ben?
I think it resolves a lot of the mutual exclusivity concern and brings a lot of the thematics closer to the class as opposed to part of the path. And so that will give us a stronger theme for each individual class as opposed to breaking up a theme across multiple paths within a class, which is something that will give us stronger individual thematics for the choice that you make when you pick a class for the game.
And that's really important because, whether it's for gameplay purposes, for RPG purposes, for our purposes, for Michelle and for the art team, the idea here is that no matter what, we want to create really cool classes. We've said we were going to create really cool classes. We said we're going to create very cool paths. And the path system is still there. It's not like there is going to be no paths, because that would be bad. That would make our game not even a MOBA. But they're not going to be as symmetrical, I guess is the best way to talk about it. Like we had talked about with the Drengo, where the idea was then that every class has 4 to 5 paths, and we were going to try to match that across the 3 realms, and we were going to try to match that across the classes. And in the stealth reveal, as you folks hopefully remember, we talked about the scouts having a very small number of paths, and that we weren't going to be afraid of creating classes that, frankly, didn't have as much breadth of gameplay. You couldn't go, well, we have this path and this path and this path and this path as well, because frankly that is, as Ben said, that's just too limited, and it's something that would have been a problem for us because we would have had to cut back. We would have had to look at things and go, well, we can't add this interesting bit of gameplay to this class because now we're going to have to make sure that all the paths are as interesting. And then you go to their opposite numbers in the other realms and go, okay, well, if the Vikings had a class that had 5 great paths for their tank, then the TDD better have 5, and the Arthurians better have 5. And so, that was starting to get, I think complicated, is a good word. And the other thing, to keep in mind is that really when you look at the classes for our game, and you look at really the most important thing, sorry for the 2 reallys, like I said, I'm not as smooth as I usually am on these things, but you look at what impact this is going to have on you folks, and based on all the discussion so far, and certainly we've also talked to some of the backers, the IT folks, about this yesterday, the reaction to it is that yes, it's going to promote better gameplay, more interesting classes. We don't have to make the sacrifice of, hey, we can't add this really cool bit of gameplay because we can't come up with 4 other very cool bits of gameplay or 12 other cool bits of gameplay to match it. So if we want a class that's more tightly focused, that has 1 or 2 really interesting paths, that we're not going to be afraid to do that. And I think that from our perspective as designers, I think that's a pretty big win.
Yeah, I think so. Being able to say, we're going to add a new class to the game, and what's the scope of that, and how long does it take to figure out that class and how that class interacts with all the other classes, is going to be easier when you don't have this huge breadth for every single one, which will allow us to actually deliver more classes and develop them faster.
Yeah, and I think the biggest complication, and this was something that you folks brought up as well during not only the presentation, the initial presentation, but on the forums, and we also said that that could be an issue, is the whole ability crafting system. So essentially we were trying to do some, obviously very complicated, and still are, abilities, and we don't want to sacrifice those because that really is the heart of the system. If we took away ability crafting, then we're not in any way creating the same game that we talked about. So this way, we not only preserve the ability crafting system in all its craziness, but at the same time make sure that we're not going to have the problems of, okay, now how do we balance this 5-path system with very open ability crafting, and at the same time make sure that it doesn't get OP. And that, that was really a big concern for us. So, that's it from, basic overview from my perspective. And, Ben, do you have anything you want to add here?
As far as the components go, it makes a lot of sense for us if you've looked at the component system, if you've listened to the things we've said about it. Under the previous system, we would have had a vast amount of combinational potential that we would have had to balance for, or we could have tried to limit it by creating constraints and exclusivity rules of like this can't go with this, even though they're both with the same class, they're from different paths, so they would have limits. But that would have really made the breadth of the combinational components kind of irrelevant. So we're taking, instead of limiting what's within the different paths, and by paring it down, we're allowing the combinational potential to stay broad and to not make those rules that say you can't put these two things together, but there's less things because there's not as much breadth in the individual classes. So you'll be able to fully explore that within your class, as opposed to having rules that say you can't do it just to limit the combinational potential problem that we would have encountered otherwise.
Exactly, and when you looked at the path presentation, we were very clear from the beginning that you couldn't master every path, because that would have been a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't like we're going from a system where you could do anything you wanted, and you could have you could fulfill as many paths as you wanted to a much more restrictive system. Not at all. It's essentially, instead of having one class which was going to have 4 or 5 paths, we're going, and very willing to say, we're going to have 2 classes that have that many, or have one class that has almost that many and kick out a class that might only have one path in it, because that path is cool and that path fits the kind of gameplay we want, or fits the thematic. And that's a really important, for me, aspect of this, besides gameplay, is to create classes that you folks get excited about. And one of the problems with the Drenger and some of the other ideas I had was they felt more generic. And we talked about that as well during the presentation, that those initial classes were more like wrappers. And they were wrappers around the candy filling inside of the paths. And so, what? It's better for us just to remove the wrapper, deal with the paths as individual classes, make them more interesting, make them more iconic, make them the kind of classes that you folks loved in Warhammer Online, or you loved in Dark Age of Camelot, or any of the other MMOs that you've played over the years. And that's where we're really going. And I think Michelle, from an art perspective, and Michelle obviously has been part of, because you're going to see some of the work she's been doing of this right from the beginning, of trying to give you guys, and the art team, classes that you could really get behind, that you could really concept, that you could really, have some great ideas on how they should look, on their weapons, on the armor, for not just the paths, trying to fit 4 or 5, but to fit, really much more streamlined, classes. What do you think about it?
With the visually for the classes, challenges, since we're got so many distinct and wide amount of classes, is making everyone read visually fast and still feel visually cool. You want to look good, but the main focus is assisting gameplay. So coming up with a lot of cool new I want to call them vibes. Each class gets its own vibe, because you want to be able to tell pretty fast what general branch you go down. You might not know what exact skills they've picked, but you can kind of gauge it a lot faster and know how to react. And our goal, of course, is make it look cool, but really is to allow you to visually tell oh, okay, yeah, that's that branch in that realm generally. And there's gonna be a lot of cool shit I think you guys will like.
Well, I think vibe is a good word. I mean, I like that a lot. And, you know, you'll see that in the second part of the presentation when we talk about what's going to happen. But vibe is important. You know, being able to identify classes not only from their attacks, but also just frankly from gear, even though it's not, because I know you folks are going to ask, well, wait a second, does this mean class-based gear? And no, we'll talk about that in another presentation. But it's just to be able to create these images in your mind and then on the battlefield so that, you know, you recognize what you're fighting. So not only by the look of the armor, not by the weapon, just by the weapons, but also by the spells that and the abilities that the classes are going to use. So all that is going to be much more tightly focused than it would have been otherwise. And I think that's obviously a big win for us. So let's get to the second part. So, you know, I know now everyone's wondering, okay, so how many classes are we going to have? And when are you going to talk about them? So let's start second first again. We're going to start talking about them starting next Friday. What we're going to do is, if you go, I think we're ready to put up the overview page. So what we're going to show you now is an overview of the class page. What is going to happen is over the next 10 weeks, you folks are going to tell us which of these class trios you want to see revealed next. Each trio represents a certain role in the game. So, you know, just say if you were a mage DPS, or a tank, or a fighter, or a heal, whatever words you want to use for a trio, and those trios are one of that, you know, role for each realm. Sorry. So you have a Viking X, a TDD X, an Arthurian X, and you guys will pick that. We're going to send out surveys every week. The surveys will ask you which one of these, you know, trios do you want us to talk about next, and then it will be revealed.
Yeah, they're visually, you know, we made them in the shadows and very mysterious, but for each one that's voted on each week, then you get to see them all clearly and visualized. So
yeah, well, Michelle, Chancy, are we back on camera?
Now you are. Go ahead.
Okay, good. So what, you know, Michelle is trying to dance around because she's being nice. She had these great pieces of art that she created for these trios, and I told her to mess them up, you know, to make them a little less.
Just spill ink all over silhouettes because we like mystery, and apparently we didn't want to just like give it away. We want to keep you guessing. So there's little accents added in each one to kind of keep you guessing. You might think it's one thing, but it's actually another.
So, you know, you guys and gals are going to look at the silhouettes. You're going to look at the ink, you know, the ink-stained pieces of goodness art that Michelle, you know, did for these folks. And then you just tell us which one you want to see. And then on that following Friday, depending on the voting, we will reveal that class or those classes. Each class will have essentially a user story. And that user story will lay out all sorts of interesting information about the class, whether it's backstory, its motto, its death curse. You guys might remember that's something we talked about. The divine intervention ability. We've also, you'll see components and abilities, sample abilities for each class of each trio will be revealed every Friday. And then the week following, we will talk about it on the forums. We'll talk about it, you know, on a live stream, hopefully, obviously depending on time, about the classes. And you'll be able to get some more information and give us more feedback on them. And then when all of the classes are revealed, we'll do another survey from you folks, to you folks. We'll get another survey out, to you folks, where you'll get to tell us what you think. We had promised you right from the beginning that you guys and gals were going to have votes on this. And, well, this is, you know, how you're going to have one of your votes. And you'll tell us what you think and which one you want to be revealed, and then you'll tell us again what you think. And we'll obviously look at that feedback. We'll talk to you about that feedback because we want to hear from you if you think, you know, we've hit the mark or we're way off the mark. So, you know, that's going to start on Friday. And then I think, boy, let's see, what else can we talk about now? Well, Okay, how about for me, and we'll go back to thematics for a bit. By the way, Genesee, what is the time?
It is 3:22.
Okay. So what we want to do is we want to wrap this up in 8 minutes and then go to a QA. So Jesse, could you tell us at 2:30, please?
Yep.
Great. So for the thematics, one of the things that was really important to me, and I know to Ben as well, and to Michelle and the art team, was drawing on again some very strong, very iconic classes. So if you're wondering, what classes you're looking at now, assuming most of you are on the webpage, what you are seeing are images of the classes. The majority of them, or the vast majority of them, are drawn from the lore, mythology, and stories of the three realms. I spent a fair amount of time going through and doing research for them. Ben, obviously, and other members of the team, including Max, our writer, contributed to that as well. So expect to see classes that look like they can leap off the page of these legends. You'll see names, you'll see stories, you'll see mottos that really do fit these classes and are hugely tied to the legends of these three peoples. And I think I think we did a pretty good job on that, Ben.
Yeah, I think we captured some interesting things, some things you haven't seen before in other games, and some different takes on some things that maybe you have seen before in other popular culture and other games and other places. So expect to see a lot of new and different and interesting things that might surprise you.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I mean, we really wanted to create these classes in a way that fit this game. So if the lore fit, we certainly used it. If the lore needed a bit of tweaking, we weren't afraid to tweak. And even in some of the classes that in other games would be a certain way, because that's the way these games have done it, to the point of being very tropish, we've just said the heck with it, and we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it in a way that fits, our game. And so starting next Friday, you folks will see the first of the trios. So anything you guys want to add?
Nope, I think that about covers the beginning of it. I'm sure people want to ask questions.
Vote on all the things.
Okay, so for the next half hour or so, Genesee is going to go through the questions. One thing I do want to answer right from the beginning, because I know this is going to be asked, is this going to affect the schedule? The answer is no. It is not going to affect the schedule for a number of reasons. And I guarantee you folks we're going to ask this question, so sorry for because I should have actually mentioned it earlier. For two reasons, it's not going to have any, at least negative effect on the schedule. First, we're not doing class-based armor to the extent of other games. We've been very clear on that from the beginning. So we're not going to have to create, or Michelle and the team aren't going to have to create tons of concept art, tons of armor pieces, tons of weapons, tons of everything that other games needed for classes and races. That isn't changing at all, not one bit. You can still wear armor, you can still use weapons that aren't associated with your class in any way. The amount of sharing that's going to go on, and we actually had a review on that this morning with the armor, some of the armor. The amount of sharing that's going to go on between the classes, that hasn't changed. So, second, the other reason it's not going to affect the schedule in a negative way is because of balance. And, as Ben mentioned earlier, that's a big deal. Trying to get all the paths balanced, all the ability crafting elements and components balanced, that is now made a bit simpler than it was before. So we absolutely think, and I think with a lot of confidence, that it's going to be easier to balance this than it would have been the other system. Right, Ben?
Yeah, I think it is. There's less combinational potential per class, but we're not increasing the scope to create more classes. So there's going to be about the same number of abilities that there were before. There's going to be about the same number of possible things that you could put together as there were, but they're going to be broken up differently into more pieces because there are going to be more classes that are going to be split between. So it doesn't increase the scope, the number of things that we have to create. It just breaks them up differently and makes them in more manageable pieces by having more classes to break them down in between.
Exactly. And if you guys, since you are looking at the webpage, you'll see that there are 10 trios up there. And so those trios represent the classes not only that we've promised that we were going to have via when we talked about archetypes, but some additional classes that we also want to get in at the same time. So I think that's good for now.
Yep, there's
Right.
some stuff up there that we haven't even talked about yet.
Oh, yeah.
So if you pick that one, you'll discover something completely new.
It's kind of cool. All right, so questions, folks.
I think people could use a breakdown in steps of how they go about voting on the classes. They're asking about starting next Friday, step 1,
Okay.
and give them a list.
All right, so what's going to happen is starting next Friday, a survey, this Friday, sorry, not next Friday, starting this Friday, you will get a survey via email. You've gotten our surveys in the past, you'll get this one. If you haven't gotten a survey from us and you've been around for more than a few months, please contact support because you should be getting emails and surveys from us. This survey will ask you, of the current silhouettes, which one do you want to see revealed next week? And all you'll have to do is pick one of them. It's really that simple. When you do that, and everyone else does that, the following Friday, we will publish the results. The the trio that has the most votes will get unlocked. New web page will go up with the trios in their, glorious next level of art that isn't been, messed up on purpose because of me.
Not messed up, hidden.
Messed up. She's being so nice. With a lot more information about each one of the classes of the trio. And then you'll get another survey that same day, which will then say, okay, here are the ones that remain. And you'll pick that. And that will continue until all the classes are revealed. All the trios are revealed.
Okay, this is not a question, but Lorgarn wants you to know, Michelle, that, my God, that is some beautiful artwork for the classes. Please make sure you and the art team know this. As an artist himself, he's Jelly Bean. So he's just like,
we appreciate it. We're glad you dig it a lot. It took a lot of reviews.
Okay, here's a general one on classes and races. Killer Bean 509 asks, can you be any class on any race?
Can you be any class on any race? The answer right now is yes. We've said from the beginning we aren't committing to no ever locking on races, but right now, no plans.
Okay. Mazer asks, what are you going to do for the people who like small group or team PvP? Will there be a matchmaking system or some way? It's not really about this, but if you want to.
Oh, do you need it's almost like, do you need the Holy Trinity to function as a team?
I'm not sure. Do you know what exactly he's asking? Is it going to be, I don't know if you're asking for looking for group, looking for...
I don't know. Like,
Not sure.
we can certainly answer both
Yeah,
of those
I would,
real quick.
let's move on to the next question and have you explain to Genesee exactly what you're looking for with that, and then we'll address that.
Badgerina asks, is your goal to release as many classes with full release as possible, or to slowly have expansions rolled out to keep interest?
Well, we certainly want a heck of a lot of classes. Like I said, we put up 30 right now on release. Are we going to have other classes post-release? Absolutely. We've very committed to that. That was the stretch goal, with the Spirit class. So we're still committed to that. And that's one of the big things as well, right, Ben? The advantage of doing it this way.
Yeah, we want to be able to release classes more frequently. If we had classes that had a whole lot of different paths, a lot of diversity, testing them is going to be hard, developing all their components is going to be hard, making sure they have good parity with the classes that are already in the game would be hard. In this case, we're defining classes a lot more loosely, so as Mark was saying, some of them will have more paths, some will have less paths. Even having a single path doesn't mean no choices, but it means less choices, less things to balance, and less things to compare to other classes, so we can get them out more quickly. So that means that you will see new classes coming into the game more often than you would have seen before this update.
Rumpelstiltskin asks, are stealth classes included in the lineup in the trios? Is that going to be something you'll see?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We have both the core stealth class and the scouts in there as well.
Just keep your questions right now on classes. You can ask general stuff then later, but there's a lot of other things about wounds that are coming up here. Okay, Maze, are you going to have to reorganize that question for me? It's still the same problem that we had before trying to answer it. Okay. Rhaegar asks, he missed some of this. He says, can we mix and match from different paths still?
If the paths don't belong to the class, no. Can you mix, and match within a class? Absolutely. That has not changed. Just think of it as the number again. For now, the simplest way to look at it is instead of 4 to 5 paths guaranteed per class, there'll be fewer paths per class and more classes.
McCavity asks, what will the class reveals tell us? Are we going to see some concrete and specific information like abilities, spells, mechanics, items, or is it going to be vague information like, with this class we want to do X, Y, or Z?
No, there's a lot more specific information than that. And there'll be even more specific information as that class goes into development. So, and I'll just take a slight segue here. As we move into beta, obviously we have to start putting in the classes. What you folks have been seeing to date are, of course, just archetypes. Ways for us to test the engine. Ways for us to test the ability system, the crafting, the ability crafting system. So, obviously in beta we have to have real classes. And to come up with a good word besides cards, because it's getting, it's going to be bigger than cards very quickly. But that class informational, database is going to grow as those classes go into the game. We've told you folks from the beginning we weren't going to be hiding numbers. We want to get your feedback on things. So what you'll be starting with, again, beginning next Friday, we'll start with the basic theme, a motto for the class, abilities for the class, divine intervention ability, death curse ability, other things that we may get in before as well. But those will be added to. Every time that we add something that's important to a class, and I'm not talking about balancing the numbers or adding, another, maybe not even another component, we will add that to the list. And so, yeah, you're going to be getting more information about these classes than you might have expected.
Yeah, there's some good things in there right now. They're just some samples to give you sort of a sampler of what this class is all about. There will be more comprehensive information as we get into beta.
Lake LOL asks, are the current classes well developed? How's the skill system working out in relation to combat?
Are they well developed? Oh no, God no. We've been working in the archetypes. That's the whole point. If everything was well developed with the classes right now, we would be well late in having this discussion. This is what we want to kick to you guys. We're going to be putting out over the next 10 weeks all the information about these classes that we have. Well, not all the information, a lot of the information that we have today about the classes. And over those weeks, as we're revealing more information, we're going to be implementing the first classes in the game. So, once again, this is just an overview of each of the classes with a whole bunch of information about it. As we implement the classes, put them into the game, then we're going to give you guys more information about them. In the meantime, we'll be getting feedback from you after each reveal. Do you like those classes? Do you like, the thematic? Do you like, their core abilities? That's the whole point.
Yeah, these guys haven't been built yet, just so you guys know where we're at, right? They need their animations, they need their effects, they need a bunch of systems in the combat system that aren't in yet. So these are just the concepts and examples and things that we're going to be building. They're not built yet, they're not playable yet, we don't know if they're going to work yet, we don't know how well balanced they are. That's all stuff that's going to come in the future.
Remember, we're still in alpha, so we got to get this stuff before beta, and again, that's where you guys come in and the feedback from you folks come in.
Jalel7 asks a question which he means to be sarcastic, but I think it's a good opportunity for Michelle to talk about trios. He says, I don't see a concept art trio looking like healers. I guess he finally decided to remove them from the game. Good riddance. So his question is, I guess, about looking at the trios and being able to tell the classes. Can you talk more about like the visual?
So trios, you know, are specifically, well, right now they're mysterious. So you'd be surprised each week with what you vote on. There are healers in there, but I do try on a lot of the trios to not just go for the easy answer, what we've been seeing the last, like, you know, decade of when you think a healer is. So trying out some new stuff, but like basically they're in there, and once they're revealed, you'll see how heal-tastic they are. I just didn't go with the typical color scheme or look you would have thought initially, I think.
And even though that was a sarcastic question, which we thank you as always, Trivial, for that, I can guarantee you that there are more than one healer trios in there.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to like a lot. The healers are going to like what they see.
Yeah, I love my healers. I want them to feel cool. It's, you know, no more of the what's it, pansy type healer.
Okay.
That's a very good way to say it.
No pansy healers.
No pansy healers. Badass healers.
Helsesh asks, so from previous statements, every archetype aside from warrior or tank will utilize magic in some way and draws inspiration from older RPGs tabletops. Could you tease us a bit with how players will be utilizing magic with the different classes in their everyday gameplay?
Well, so first, let's be really clear about something. Nothing has changed with that. Not at all. These classes are still as they were, you know, before, in the sense of how they were going to use, whether you call it magic, the ability system. Nothing has changed. You know, this has no effect on that whatsoever. So in terms of teasing, boy, you know, how do we want to tease them? You got anything? You got anything in mind?
I don't know what you want to give away.
I don't know. Do we want to be nice?
No.
No. See, Ben's
No.
he's mean. Oh, Ben's
Be nice.
mean.
They expected an actual class name today. They're just like, oh, no names.
Oh, they really want
not
one?
a single one.
Should we give him one?
Give them one.
I don't want to give them one. I want to make them vote. They have to
Technically,
decide.
they have
Oh,
maybe.
Oh, see,
Ben's
Ben
so
is
mean.
mean. No, Ben's not mean. Ben's a good guy. Okay. Let's give him one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do something actually we did in IT chat one night. All right, so here's how it's going to work, guys. Pick a number from 1 to 30. The number that gets the most votes from what Genesee, I want to make Genesee work hard
You're
right
gonna make her
now.
count which one gets
Pick
the
a
most
number
votes.
from 1 to 30, and then we'll pull that number out of the spreadsheet. And we'll
Okay.
reveal the name.
No, 422 is not between 1 and 30. Just say Reaver, you're funny. Oh, wow. Whoa! Whoa! Okay, 17 looks like the most popular right now. Whoa! Okay. Let's slow that chat. Okay,
Chat's
let's go with
frozen.
17.
They asked for it.
Jeez.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Did you count them all?
And are they individual names? All
In the
unique.
flash that my eyes saw, 17.
Okay,
seems
hang
to
on. I'll be
popular.
right back.
Yeah, now we have to look it up because we weren't ready to do this.
Now we have to look it up.
I think I know what it is.
See, we love you. Don't ever say that we don't love you.
Yeah.
It's a PDT class.
Tyler's gonna come and say hi. Or because it's like anything but 17. Only absolute values count.
No floating point classes.
Also, you're gonna have to re-ask all of your questions about that because now I've got 500 messages with numbers.
Yeah. It's a good time to think of
Okay,
your
stop
next
asking
question.
Stop putting numbers. We're looking at 17.
The numbers are done.
Ask your question.
Ask a question. Can we answer anything else? Is there any other?
What's your favorite class so far? Well, that would be a cheat. You can't.
Yeah, we can't tell
that's
you.
A trick.
No.
That's a trick. I liked art class a lot in school.
Art class?
Yeah, I liked art class.
Is it still planned for crafters to be a separate class? Well, Ben can answer that.
Oh yeah, crafters are not part of this. So if you're looking at any of that and you're looking for which one is the crafter, they're not on this. You're not voting for which one is the crafter.
Okay, so number 17 is a spirit class. It belongs to the TDD, and it's Morrigans.
That's it.
Yay.
That's it.
There you go.
There's your name. And if you look up the Morrigan and the legends associated with her, you'll get a pretty good idea of where we're going with this class. And again, telling you that's the spirit class.
Okay, Sacrix asked this, and Sacrix, you would not get a poster if you asked this. Will any classes be hybrid by design, or will that come from taking things in different path lines of the class?
Oh, absolutely. Classes were going to be hybrid in design.
Okay. Godslayer Inc. asks Michelle, where a greatsword look different cosmetically when Class A uses it than when Class B uses it, same for armor, etc.
Would the greatsword change based on what class
class
it's
is
wielded
using
by?
it, yeah.
No.
Okay.
Now, that would present the same problem, right? If we, said that all the armor was going to be different based on who,
Yeah.
was wearing it, that would be the same thing as having class-based armor or class-based weapons. Now, the attacks could be different, of course. Somebody who has a great sword from one class and another class that also uses the great sword could have different and will have different attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's hopefully going to be some variation in the animations. We have to be very careful about that because we don't have very many animators. But there will definitely be difference in the particles and trails and stuff that are associated with that, because we can do a lot of differentiation in that doesn't take nearly as much work as redoing the animations, which is a lot more intensive for specific abilities.
Yeah.
Damsel asks, will classes be categorized in different difficulties? Like some classes will be more towards beginners, while others are very hard to play or get more mechanics to work with.
I don't think we're going to sit down and go, oh boy, this is, for total noobs, or for, beginners versus more advanced. But I do think that certainly going with this sort of system opens up opportunities that if we wanted to make some classes, much more difficult to play, we could do that.
Yeah,
right?
I certainly don't have a low skill for class for this game. This is a game that, again, as you guys hopefully know, is targeted towards MMO veterans, people who've played these games before. So there isn't really an easy mode class, and it would be hard to do that in a PvP game anyway. But there certainly are some classes that are deliberately intended to be harder than others, especially paths within classes that are intended to be more difficult than others.
Chinny D asks, will there be musical instruments in the game? And I'm asking this just because I want people to look at Michelle's concept art for different musical instruments.
Yes, that's easy. Yes, there will be.
Xerxes Daok asks, are each of the trios the same class type in each, like Trio A is tanks and Trio B is healers, or is there a mixture of archetypes in each trio?
No, each trio represents a single role or archetype or whatever word you want to use, in the meantime.
With a representative from each realm within
Correct.
that trio.
Correct. So we don't have mix and match trios. So if you think of the archer archetype, when you look for something in the trios that might resemble an archer, everything there is an archer, even if one of the classes or one of the images didn't represent in your mind an archer.
Unsung Cesspool asks, what process does the dev team take when approaching the creation of a new class or trio? What inspirations do you all take from, or perhaps what mistakes out there have you learned from?
Well,
Go ahead.
first, you get the idea. I get the idea from Mark or a name, and then, I read up what he's researched, then I go look for my own visual research. I do like to put nods of history or mythology in it if I can and whatnot. But, a lot of it is then also, just trying to think a little bit more outside the box. So also when comparing everything, you feel like it's actually someone unique and not just if there are a whole bunch of, let's say, like, fighter types, but one's a tank versus, one's another thing. You still want them to feel, like, different, and you don't want to feel like you're just in a crowd of guys with swords. But definitely a lot of, like, Googling around, like, reading lore and whatnot, just to get inspired for what something could be or feel like, vibe-wise.
Yeah, our workflow thus far has been Mark does the initial research and just digs into a bunch of stories to find some obscure reference to something somewhere from some place that has a sort of initial concept to it, and then he sort of does like a basic write-up of like, so here's the reference, this is the name of it, this is the culture that it's from, and here's, you know, some basic flavor text for it. And then Michelle, obviously, all
sometimes
the
there's very, very crazy lore, and I read it, and then I like cry silently because I'm not sure how to even. Because you still have to make it feasible. Like that's the hard part. Like in concept, is you also want to make it feasible, and can we actually accomplish this, and you know, in a way that'll make everybody happy. But sometimes it's like I can't just put several legs on something. Something of that nature.
And I don't think these guys are also giving themselves enough credit. I mean, if you look at everything that happens in the studio, it's not just me coming up with something and just kicking it over the fence, or you know, even me going into a lot of detail about whether it's a class or it's a race. The art team, for example, Michelle, or I should say the concept art team, Michelle and Sandra have come up with things while you're doing research that's led design down certain paths.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where I wasn't even necessarily thinking about something, and then, you know, Michelle and Sandra come up with something, and I go, oh my God, that's awesome. And go, all right, I got to build, okay, now I got to build some gameplay around it, or I got to run with this idea because it's better than my idea.
We like giving bonus options.
This is
Or
the
like-
add a giraffe theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just add a giraffe. You know, you ask for blue, and we're like, here's all this blue, but check out this giraffe.
And they do that, well, except for the giraffes, and with things other than giraffes. And the same to Ben as well. You know, look, whether it, you know, it's me coming up with the initial idea or writing a lot of words, or me coming up with the initial idea or writing some words, Ben also writes words. You know, Ben just doesn't do numbers, and other folks get involved here as well. And this stuff changes. I mean, it changes, you know, from my initial pass, or other times people will come up with something totally on their own and say, hey, what do you think about this? Even if it's, you know, not art or not, you know, design. And, you know, if it kicks ass, if it can make this game better, groovy. Put it in. Let's find a way to make it work. And that's really one of the most important takeaways for you guys, you know, about the class system, is what you're seeing now, or what you will be seeing over the next, you know, 10 weeks, are just, you know, those initial, very strong, very iconic, very thematic, very interesting bits of gameplay and mechanics that we're going to build the class around. And then as we get feedback from you guys, both from, you know, just initial comments and surveys and things, but feedback from the game, from actually playing the game and not playing an engine build, we'll make adjustments as necessary. Because that's what this is all about at the end of the day. It's making great, iconic, thematic, all that kind of, you know, nice words, classes that you guys want to play. And you're going to hate us for it. I mean, that is, you know, that is one of my absolute goals with this, is to make you angry at us because we're giving you too many choices. We did that with Dark Age of Camelot, and by we, I am not speaking in the Imperial we, because I never speak in the Imperial we, because, well, we think that's really dumb. But when I say we, it's the team, and it was the team at Mythic who did some great work on Dark Age, or did some great work on Warhammer, so that even today people are still playing Dark Age, or people are still playing, you know, through emulators, Warhammer, and talking about, even if they don't play it, talking about the classes, talking about things that they remember from those games that they loved. And a lot of the time, it was the classes, right, Ben?
Yeah, there was a lot of really good classes and a lot of good ideas in Dark Age classes. There was a lot of them that carried forward into Warhammer, and a lot of them that have been adapted to other games since then that people have borrowed from those games. And we're doing the same thing, both from the games that we previously worked on and other games that we've played, other people who've played games throughout the studio, and other games that aren't even computer games or aren't even RPGs. So there's a lot of sources, there's a lot of background, and there's a lot of just delving into the mechanics of the combat system that we've created and looking at what we can do with that's not even derived from necessarily other games, because we're doing things in the fundamental mechanics of things like wounds that people are seemingly very interested in chat that other games don't even have. So a lot of dealing with that and how the different classes and different mechanics interact with some of those unique features is going to be different and have a source that's not derived necessarily from anywhere else.
And that's one of the things as well about lessons that you asked about. what lessons have we learned from other games? And I think the biggest lesson that we can learn from other games, including the ones that we were a part of, is don't fall in love with any mechanic. Don't fall in love with any class to the extent that it clouds your judgment. Okay, because that has screwed over more games and more classes, because whether it's the company CEO or the lead designer or whoever goes, no, it must be this way, and that is, might as well be written in stone. And we're not going to do that. We haven't done it yet, and what we're doing here should show that. And we're not going to do it going forward. It's all about learning, not only from the past, from games that succeeded, but games that failed as well. And learning from our own mistakes as we implement these classes and implement abilities, and just go, hey, you know what, that just doesn't work. We toss it. And that's, I think, of all the lessons we can learn from other games, I think that's the most important one.
Yuki28 asks, how do you plan to synergize the races and classes? For example, how will a human warrior be different from a Valkyrie warrior?
Well, we've said right from the beginning that, races matter. And, one of the things that Ben has done already and will continue to do is obviously work with the stats of the races, right?
Yeah, in this specific example, humans are Arthurian, Valkyries are Vikings, so that doesn't necessarily work. But say, you have two races that are in the same realm and can be the same class. They're going to have unique stats, and they're going to have unique banes and boons for those different races that are going to play differently, sometimes in very significant ways, like especially if you look between the giant races that have very different attributes than like the small races. Playing those two characters, even if they're the same class, are going to have some very significant differences, more significant than in other games necessarily, where you have to sort of maintain a sort of balance for PvE reasons.
Yep.
Sometimes there's going to be very vast imbalances between what race you picked as far as which class you're playing.
And that's really important. And just to clarify what Ben said, because people, might worry that there'll be no humans in the Vikings. What the reason Ben said that is right now the human model is an Arthurian.
Yeah.
So if you're playing in our alpha or you've been a beta player, it's the human model is Arthurian. There will be obviously human races for all the realms. So just so that people don't panic and go, oh my God, Ben says no humans for the Vikings. Everything's going to be a giant or a diverger. Ah! No, it won't be like that.
Yeah, we haven't created or named the human type characters for the different realms, except for the Arthurian one, which is still just generic, but that's the way it is right
so
now.
that will be changing.
Yeah.
Question about skill decay. Is the plan to have skill decay even for classes with less paths?
Yep.
Will Feedum asks, will it be possible to get cosmetic effects like particle effects that you can add to weapons armor to make classes even more distinguishable?
Well, we talked about during the Kickstarter, that you could get glows and stuff. So the answer is yes. How much or how far we'll go with that? Obviously, that's something that is not as important for launch. So it's not something we're going to focus on, in the short term, other than in order to complete, the promises during the Kickstarter.
Amber Donnie asks, will the armor or weapons stay the same size? If a tiny Lure King type class tries to wield a great axe, will it look stupid big in their hands or vice versa, or will they adjust to the race class?
No. If you're a short, Luca Pan who likes to jump around buildings and go up really, really high and, get everyone angry at you, and then want to pick up a great sword that has been hefted by a very advanced stage giant, and that sword probably weighs more than you, you're not going to be able to do that. These aren't magical self-adjusting weapons. Same with the armor. We've talked about that in the past as well. This is not one size fits all.
Overkill 2130 asks, in PvP combat, the advantage lies in knowing your enemy. Most PvP players try to adjust their looks, so it takes longer to guess, thus having an advantage in battle. Are the class looks going to be so obvious you can tell what they are from a mile away, or will the look be more vague?
I think it could be more vague if someone decided to go outside what would be the norm for the class. Now they're going to take like maybe a hit in their stats, I'd assume, for that. But they would look different, which is an advantage in itself. But are you willing to, let's say, take that hit in specific stats or deal with the loss in certain areas to gain that tactical advantage in another? So, I mean, it's possible.
Oh, it's not even possible. It's going to happen, right?
Yeah, you definitely don't have to in our game self-identify as your class as far as your appearance. So if you see some guy and he's in, medium armor and he's not doing anything, you really don't know what type of class he is. But as soon as he starts doing anything, he's almost certainly going to identify what class he is because the abilities are going to tell that story of, what he's generally doing. And, even to that extent, you don't have to self-identify very much at all as far as the equipment that you put on. You could dress in light armor and be a tank if you really wanted to. So there's a lot you could do to try to be deceptive, but it's not going to carry you really too far as soon as you start doing things.
Exactly. And we've said that as well from the beginning. If we have a system where any class can wear any armor, any race can wear any armor or weapon, it's up to you how you want to identify. If you and your group want to all kind of go out as these crazy looking combinations for what you really are, fine. Good luck.
Curious CUS, so with 10 archetypes, does that mean that beta is still 2 or 3 months away or delayed?
Well, beta's already delayed. And the number of archetypes has no effect on beta because there is zero chance that we would have all archetypes or all classes, because they won't be archetypes at that point. They'll be classes. There's zero chance that we're going to have all classes implemented for the opening of beta. That'd be crazy. We would never have done things that way because, frankly, we have to balance. We would have had to balance, no matter what, a fair number of class path combinations right from the get-go. So trying to have them all for the opening of beta 1 was never something that was in the plans.
Yeah, not for the beginning, for the end. By the time we're done with beta, all these will be in because otherwise that's not going to go well, but not at the beginning, certainly. And to reiterate, this isn't impacting the schedule. We're developing the same amount of stuff that we were developing before. We're just breaking it up differently, breaking it up into more classes rather than fewer classes with more paths. So it's not changing the schedule overall. It's just the way that we're presenting it and breaking it up.
Exactly. And if anything, it would allow us to bring in, this change would allow us to bring in potentially a class earlier, because it has fewer paths. So if there's any impact, it would be, I don't want to say speed it up because that will just look silly, but it would not negatively impact the schedule. There's just no way. We wouldn't be doing this if we thought it was also something that was going to be a hit to the scheduled launch, at least in our heads, because we've told you guys already we're not adding new stretch goals because of these classes. We're not adding other things because of these classes, including a delay, because that'd be ridiculous.
Okay, I'm going to ask this, and then I'm going to look for probably a final question or two, because we have 1 more minute till 4 o'clock. So, Tebow asks, are there previously released classes in the trios? Basically, are there just new ones, or are there going to be ones that's already been considered confirmed?
Well, there's one. The Hellbound.
Okay.
See, we did give you a name.
Yeah, so now you have 2 names.
Okay, ask your final questions while I read these here. Krex asks, will each realm have a unique class that has totally different mechanics to everything else? For example, in Dark Age, only 2 of the realms had a mass summoner class like Bone Dancer.
Okay, yeah, so there are going to be unique mechanics. Some of the basic mechanics are going to be ubiquitous across all of the realms. You can't have tanks only go to one realm or healers only go to one realm. So the basic fundamentals are going to kind of stay that way, but when you start talking about like Bone Dancers, yeah, you're going to have stuff that is realm specific, where one realm does something, I can't give a specific example because that would give it away, but you're going to have a class that does something in a realm that there's not an equivalent of in another realm. The class that's in the trio with them is going to do something very different and not necessarily even fulfill the same group slot in a group because of that difference. So there's going to be some very significant differences, but overall the basics are going to be covered for all the realms, even though those basics might be broken up into slightly different ways.
And let me add that that's the key to the kind of asymmetrical design we're doing with this game. We've said from the beginning that we're not going to have mirrored classes. I mean, that was absolutely one of the foundational principles, and just like every other foundational principle, this isn't changing it at all. Anything, it's an enhancement of it, because it also affects choices matter, because your choices of classes, matter even more now than they did, literally an hour ago, at least to the backers. And so that's really important to keep in mind, hugely important to keep in mind. And the unique gameplay is another reason that I wanted to go down this path, is that, if we're looking at trying to make a game that's going to last not for a few weeks and not for a few months, but for years and hopefully decades, a lot of it is going to be about the gameplay. It's not just going to be about the graphics. It's not going to be, about the effects. It's going to be gameplay. Gameplay is what's going to drive this game to be quite successful. Everything else helps, certainly. Like if the art was horrid, then, well, that wouldn't help the game. And if the sound and music were horrid, that wouldn't help the game. But what's going to keep people coming back is that you're enjoying playing the game. You're enjoying the gameplay. You're enjoying the mechanics for your class or your realm. And the choices that you have in different mechanics and different classes also will help keep you, happier longer playing this game. And going down this path is the right way, and I think the best way to ensure that we can keep, as Ben said earlier, adding classes more easily over the lifespan of this game, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more in-depth and complicated things happen later. Whenever you start developing classes for a game, you kind of start with the most fundamental core required things that are going to be some of the easier ones to both develop and to play. So a lot of the play styles and stuff for the initial starting classes are not going to be as advanced as the things that we're going to be able to come up with once the systems are fully fleshed out and the game starts coming along later. So eventually you'll see classes that are going to have mechanics that are evolved over time based on what we had done previously, and so it'll be interesting to see over the course of time and extender packs and expansions what all the new and interesting things are that eventually come online. And they should come online, as we've said, faster now than they would have previously, because there's going to be less lead time to develop and implement an entirely new class than there was.
Okay, I lied. Two more.
Two?
This one is probably going to be a short answer, but I have to ask it because I hear it all the time. iOS says, I noticed the silver hands have little or no art revealed about them in comparison with the other races, and I'm wondering about it. Has their visual design been under development still, or are you guys just withholding it for now? Will we see them in any class art reveals? So much love for silver hands.
The silver hands are coming. That's all I'll say right now.
Okay. Last question. Tayan. Just for clarification, can you clarify the class balance between the realms? I thought the initial idea was that if Realm A had a specific class, Realm B may or may not also have that class available. Are you now saying that all 30 classes are available to all realms, TLDNR? How are you going to balance the realms? Kind of went over some of that.
I think we already answered that, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think we did. So there are 30 classes in the game, right, as far as this release is concerned, and crafters, which are outside of this. There are only 10 of them per realm. They're exclusive to that realm. So each realm in this list has 10 classes. Those classes are only available to that one realm. The trios represent a sort of matched set of a role. So as we've sort of said, like healers are one of those. So there's a healer for each realm, but the healer for one realm is not a class that can be played by another realm, and those classes have specific names, and they'll be revealed as we get into this voting.
And the healer is a great example. I mean, if you look at the core, when we talked about core archetypes or core roles, we knew, obviously, that every realm kind of had to have a healer, right? Same kind of had to have an archer, kind of had... So all the archetypes that we talked about are represented in this list.
And more.
And more. So that hasn't changed. I mean, nothing has changed in terms of what we're going to implement from what we've said so far. We said we were going to have archetypes. We said we were going to have all the archetypes that we talked about, either in for launch or in the case of Spirit class, and one of the stealth classes we said post-launch, so that hasn't changed. Might we be able to get them in sooner, just as we've talked about, since the stealth presentation? Yes, we might. Nothing has changed there. Are these classes different? Well, the healer is a really good example of that, actually, because the mechanics that the pure healers use in this game are very different from each other. So, when you're playing a TDD healer, it is not the same as playing an Arthurian healer. So, again, we are sticking to exactly what we said about not having mirrored classes. We're sticking to what we said about having different mechanics. None of that has changed at all. If anything, as we've been saying since this began, it's not even a big change. It's sort of like just going a little bit, to the left or to the right. It will give us the opportunity to bring in other, sorts of gameplay mechanics that we might not have been able to easily bring in for the past system. So again, the too long didn't listen version, more classes, more options spread out over those classes over time because of this system, more interesting gameplay mechanics because of this, change. And, over the next 10 weeks, you guys will going to get to see a lot of really interesting stuff. And was that the last question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me wrap it up by saying, look, folks, this is something really cool. The classes that you're going to be seeing, again, starting next week, are focused heavily on the law of your realm. We've said from the beginning that this game is all about realm pride. That is so important. You have to love your realm, right? You have to really love, whether it's the races or the classes, the land itself. And as Andrew showed with the procedurally generated terrain system, we're getting to the point where the land is going to change based on your realm. With this class system, we're implementing another part of that realm pride, which is pride in the classes. You've seen some of the races. Obviously, we have more races coming. You haven't seen a lot of the classes. Starting next week, you're going to start to see them. And that's, I hope, very exciting for you folks, because you're going to see why you should, if you like the TDD, why you should be proud of your classes, why you should enjoy playing these classes. And you'll see how tightly so many of them are tied to the lore. And we want you to feel like a TDD. We want you to feel like an Arthurian. We want you to feel like a Viking. And if the classes were more generic, even if the paths were cool, we felt that that wasn't the right way to do things. This way, we know it's the right way to do things. And I think over the next 10 weeks, you folks are going to agree. And frankly, if you don't, let us know. You'll get every opportunity via the forums, via surveys, via chat, via live streaming, because this presentation is just the first. And we're going to be doing, at least the first in this format. And we're going to be doing a lot more with them. Don't know if our mascot's going to join us. He looks kind of sad, but, after all, we have the depths, and, this is kind of an appropriate, guy to bring along, especially, in an introduction. So that's it. We are going to be going and signing off. We will discuss this on the forums. I want to, as always, well, actually, before I thank you guys, I want to thank Michelle first, for joining in. She isn't as used to these things yet, and she did great.
Nope.
So, Michelle, great job. I mean, Ben, this is not your first time doing this. You're going to be doing, we're going to be doing a lot more together. He's going to be doing with other folks here as well. And I think, also you did a great job, but I wasn't kind of surprised at that. And so I want to thank you, all of our backers. Hopefully you guys are excited by these changes and excited by this direction. We certainly are. If you're coming in late, or you're hearing this at the end tomorrow or another day, go to our class page. Look at all the silhouettes that we put up there. Look for the email coming on Friday to vote on on which one will be revealed, because it's up to you. And again, thanks as always for the support. We greatly appreciate it. And for those who are listening, if you're listening today, I'm going to be, depending if I'm in a sick bed tomorrow, because of course I got to get sick right before I go on vacation for a few days. If you're from the New Hampshire and Boston area, I will be up there at the end of the week with Lady J, and we're going to get together with some of our backers. Come on our forums and let us know if you want to come and meet us, so we